Honestly, I'm not even gonna lie. This video of mine has taken the longest for me to not necessarily film, but to plan when I'm gonna film this video. I meant to film this video like 2 weeks ago and have it up on my channel by now. Life just doesn't work out that way for me. I ended up getting COVID, so in this video, if I sound like I'm dying, it's mostly because I am. I'm just recovering from COVID and my voice has not returned to its normal thing. I might be talking like this for the rest of my life. Hello, welcome, or welcome back to my channel. My name is Mar, and today I am super excited because I'm here to talk about one of the most popular TikTok hockey romances, and that is Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. This is a video I have literally been planning for such a long time. I just haven't had the time to actually sit down, work on it, plan it, film it, anything like that. This is going to be kind of like an explain the plot video for Icebreaker, but to be quite honest, there's no plot to this book. Nothing really happens in this book. I wanted to make this video because I read this book purely out of just like curiosity when I was like trying to figure out why hockey romances were such a popular genre. I read this book a couple months ago and it became one of my guilty pleasures. I had a pretty fun time reading this when I read it the first time, but then as I started rereading it for this video, I ended up not liking it. I purely read this for entertainment and I thought I would make a video for those of you who are curious as to what this book is about, to provide some context as to what this book is about. It is pretty much a figure skater, hockey player romance that takes place in a college, and that's pretty much all you need to know to provide context as to like how this book became so popular. Before this book was like flying off the shelves in bookstores and all that, it was actually self-published by the author Hannah Grace, and she released it on Kindle Unlimited, which is like a monthly like subscription service that Kindle gives its members, so they have access to like millions of like different ebooks and like audiobooks, all that stuff. And so it's really like not uncommon for books to become popular on Kindle Unlimited that are like self-published, and then they get like this traditionally published deal. That's sort of context as to sort of how this book became so popular, and obviously there's like TikTok involved and all that. But what I find funny about this book series is that Icebreaker isn't a standalone novel. It is a part of a book series called the Maple Hill series, and that like this book series is written by Hannah Grace, who is actually from Manchester, England, and she's writing a book about hockey players and figure skaters in California. Obviously I know that there are like figure skaters and like hockey players in California and all that, like that's not a huge surprise, but I'm just like wondering like why she chose California out of all places. Why not in Canada? Why not in a place that's known, like Colorado, you know, like, or like anywhere else? Before we start, what makes me qualified to talk about this specific book? First off, I'm Canadian, and I've said automatic qualification right there, and I also know what the NHL is. Number two, my brother played hockey when we were growing up. This is his hockey jersey right now. And before you ask, no, I was not adopted into a white family. There can be Asian hockey players. If anything, my brother was the diversity hire on the team. In all seriousness, I've grown up around a lot of hockey players, and that's why I was so curious as to read like this book, because I was like wondering like, why are girls so enamored by hockey players? You know, like why are these authors so enamored by like sports players, hockey players, all of that? And the way that hockey players are portrayed in this book, like, I'm sorry to burst your bubble right now, but it is so off from the actual hockey players I know and have grown up with. Most of the ones that I grew up with, like, they have zero personality. Their whole personality is hockey. Sorry if I offended you by saying that, but it's true. Those are the two reasons as to why I feel like I am qualified to talk about this hockey romance, even though this specific hockey romance literally no hockey takes place in this book at all. For this video, I thought I would add some more things to it other than me just sitting here and explaining a book plot. So like the actual game of hockey, I have a scoreboard. So during this explanation, I will be keeping score of just things that happen in the book. Like if the main characters do something cute or do something like nice or whatever, I will give them a point. And I also have a penalty box. So every time the characters do something criminal, icky, cringy, or makes me want to vomit, I will throw them in the penalty box. It'll just pop up on the screen when I edit it. Yeah, so that's all I have to say. So let's get started. I'm going to introduce you to our main characters first. With this whole casting board, I went through a lot of fan casts to figure out who should be like the face of each of these characters. Obviously, like, this is just a video, it's not that serious. I genuinely, for some of them, I could not be bothered to do an accurate portrayal or casting of it. The first person we have is Miss Anastasia Allen, and she is our main girlie in this book, and pretty much she is portrayed as very much this type A, you know, very organized. She has a planner, you know, she knows exactly what she wants, what her goals is, and how she's going to get there. And Girlie also has like mad anxiety over things, so she like has to be very meticulously organized in order for her to not spiral out of control. So for this, I really just searched up figure skating show because no one could come to a decision on like what main girlie should be playing Anastasia. The first person that popped up was Kaya from, what's her show called, Spinning Out, I think. I don't know. She's Maze Runner girl. That's how I see her. She was in the Maze Runner. She has a figure skating show that was on Netflix, I think. And yeah, so I picked her because she looked pouty, and that's pretty much how Anastasia is 80% of this book. The main guy is Mr. Nathan Hawkins, and for this one, everyone was fan casting Jacob Elordi, and I like Jacob Elordi, but that is too far. That is way too far for my liking. Like, just because these hockey players are described as being taller than 6 feet, why is everyone's go-to casting Jacob Elordi? It doesn't make sense to me. The person I chose is Mr. Ross Lynch because he can dye his hair brown. Remember, he's a natural blonde, so we can see that he's dyed his hair brown before for the Sabrina show. And he actually plays hockey, and he's 6 feet. So I think that has enough criteria right there, and I think he can have the sort of like charm that Nathan Hawkins has, because Nathan, he's the captain of the hockey team. He has very much bro energy. He just wants to, you know, make it out of university to the NHL, play hockey. Like, that's his whole goal, and he's just an overall just like nice guy. He is very much a fixer. He tries to mediate a lot of things. He tries to find solutions to like the problems that the team has. He's a natural leader. He has to, you know, pretty much babysit the guys and all of that, and so like he always puts the hockey team first. So like that's the type of guy Mr. Nathan Hawkins is. So he's our main guy, and then the other characters I will introduce when they're introduced. For right now, the main two people you need to know are Anastasia and Mr. Nate Hawkins. The book starts with Miss Anastasia Allen, again, who's our main girlie. Her other nicknames go by Stassi or whatever, but no, I'm fully calling her Anastasia because her nicknames in this book are actually criminal. The book starts off with Anastasia being at the ice rink, and she's practicing her skating routine with her skating partner, Aaron. Yes, that is Mr. Chris Briney. I didn't know who to cast for Aaron, but I do know Chris Briney is good at being like kind of whiny, you know, like he's good at characters that whine and all of that, so that's why I chose him for this role. Also at the rink is her coach Brady. This is just a stock photo. I didn't know who to put for Coach Brady, and pretty much her coach is getting annoyed with Anastasia because Anastasia can't land a quadruple Lutz in their skating routine. A quadruple Lutz is when they jump up and spin, you know, 4 times, and I think that's what a quadruple Lutz is. I didn't grow up around figure skaters, I grew up around hockey players. Once they're done practicing their routine, Anastasia and Aaron are just trying to convince their coach that she's getting better at this quadruple ledge, like let's keep it in their routine, but they both know that she's not getting any better, like she's not landing that Lutz. And so their coach like isn't convinced, and she leaves the rink, and she's just like, don't come to practice hungover or eat fast food if you want to make it to the Olympics, because this girl's dream is to make it to the Olympics and to get a gold medal. And then we learn that in this chapter that Anastasia, she's, the type A girlie. She has this rigorous meal plan that Aaron has done up for her after their freshman year because he was having trouble lifting her during their routines after she gained like the freshman 15. We also learned that for this practice, she was only hungover because it was her best friend's 21st birthday the night before, and that was like the only excuse they had to like kind of let loose. One thing about Anastasia and Aaron is that they also live together. So they go back to their apartment and they are living together at this apartment that Aaron's parents or something is paying for, and they are staying with Anastasia's best friend, Lola. I put Lola Tongue here because her name is Lola. She could actually play Lola if like she really wanted to. Anyway, so on the way home to their apartment, Anastasia, she's looking through her planner, and in her planner she's like, I'm getting laid tonight. And obviously Aaron makes fun of her because she has to plan when she's having sex. Like, girlie's that type of type A. And Anastasia then tells us that she's in this like no strings attached, friends with benefits situation with this 6'6" basketball player named Ryan Rothwell. We can name this actor. That's wonderful. She has this whole no strings attached situation with Mr. Ryan. And another thing the author wants us to know about Anastasia is this girl is really small, really tiny. I think she's like 5'3". And pretty much Aaron says to Anastasia, he's like, I can't believe you're fucking around with him. He's like double your size. How does he not crush you? They then get home and Lola's at the apartment, and Miss Lola is a theater major, and she's upset because she didn't get the role in the play that they're doing. And then Lola and Aaron start to bicker, and Anastasia gets a text from Ryan, and he's just like, I'm going to be over at your apartment tonight because the basketball team is having a party and I only want to be with you tonight. Ryan arrives at the apartment later that night, and we have our first sex scene. That's just how this book goes. In the next chapter, we are introduced to our main guy, Mr. Nathan, or Nate Hawkins, and he wakes up in his room and he's sleeping with a girl and her hand is near his dick. Hannah Grace really wanted us to know that. And pretty much Nate is recalling the night before, and he's just like, I went to a party the basketball team had, and he pretty much realizes that the girl that is sleeping next to him is Kitty Vincent. She's not important to this book whatsoever, and she wakes up and leaves Nate's place. After that, we meet Nate's teammates and roommates. So we meet Robbie, JJ, and Henry. So first thing about Mr. Robbie, I put Milo, how do you say his last name? Milo Manheim? Whatever. The guy from Zombies. I just put him there because I saw a fan casting for that. Anyway, so Mr. Robbie is Nate's best friend. And one thing about him is he's also in a wheelchair after they had like this whole skiing accident. He used to be a hockey player, but now he's an assistant coach for the university's hockey team. I don't know how that works, but he's an assistant coach somehow, even though he's still a student. The next person we have is JJ, aka Jaden Johal. Everyone, for some reason, casts Zayn in this role, but I don't see Zayn, like, Zayn Malik, you can't convince me he's a hockey player. So I put Mr. Toronto Man's Prayag, Mr. It's the way you act. It's the way you act. One thing about JJ is he is goofy, a jokester, and he's also pansexual. So he's pretty much just trying to sleep around with everyone in this book. Then we have Mr. Henry. And Henry is, I think, a year or two younger than Nate and the rest of the guys. And he has he has zero filter. He has a hard time making friends. And so that's why he's pretty much living with Nate, Robbie, and JJ. We love Henry in this household, and for this, I just put Mason Gooding because I didn't know who to cast for Henry. Henry's a toughie to cast. In this chapter, it's mostly like Nate just gives background to who he is, and pretty much all he wants to do is play hockey play in the NHL. He pretty much gets drafted to the Vancouver Vipers after high school, but he decides to put his education first, even though he hates going to school. And so Nate is the captain of the hockey team, which means he's practically just a babysitter for the rest of the hockey team. And so the thing with this book as well is that like the timeline is so confusing. I don't know when the next day happens. I don't know when tomorrow happens. I don't know where we are like in the year itself. Somehow it's after class now, and Nate and JJ are talking, and they get this message in the team group chat, which is called Puck Bunnies. Henry messages the chat. They're just like, hey, coach wants to talk to us and wants us to go to the awards room instead of the rink for practice. They're all like, that's suspicious, that's weird. So they all go to the awards room, and Nate is like, okay, if he's calling this meeting, that probably means we are in a fuck ton of trouble. And so Mr. Coach Faulkner, who this is also a stock image of him, tells the team that their rink has been destroyed, and that he thinks it was someone on the hockey team that did it as a prank, and apparently I guess someone smashed the generator at the hockey rink and as well as the cooling system at the rink, so pretty much it's practically like a swimming pool. It's melted, like there is no ice, it's just water damage. He then tells the team that the director, there's a director named Director Skinner in this book, he's going to hold a meeting for all of the student athletes in the university to address what happened. We are now in Miss Anastasia's point of view, and Miss Girlie is pissed because she had the perfect schedule in her planner, and now it's all in chaos due to this last-minute meeting that the director of sports is holding. And she gets to the building and she meets up with Ryan, because remember, these two are friends. They attend the meeting together and they learn about what happened to the hockey rink, and so the director announces that since the hockey rink is out of commission, because apparently at this school as well, it's super bougie, so they have two separate rinks. I forgot to mention that. They have the hockey rink and they have the figure skating rink. Director Skinner announces that since the hockey rink is out of commission, the hockey players and ice skaters will now have to share the figure skating rink with each other for how long it will be until the hockey rink gets fixed. Miss Anastasia, Girlie, is pissed because, you know, she is training for the Olympics. She is type A. She needs everything to go her way. So she goes to Coach Brady and she's just like, this can't be happening. We can't be sharing our ice time. Like, we have regionals in 5 weeks. Like, we aren't going to qualify if these hockey heads are taking up all of our practice time. And so Coach Brady's like, okay, we'll figure it out, and Anastasia, like, you should enjoy your Friday night off. After that, Nate walks up to Anastasia, and he's just like, hey, I'm Nate. Like, he just introduces himself, and he's just like, I know this situation sucks ass, but like, I'm gonna do everything in my ability to make sure like this transition is as easy as possible. And then like he just apologizes for what happens. And he then invites Anastasia to like the party that the hockey players are throwing that night, and Anastasia is like, why are you throwing a party when your team is already in serious trouble? And Nate's just like, well, people are gonna show up regardless even if I try to stop it, so just like come and have fun. And then he asks Anastasia for her name, and she just like doesn't give it to him. I don't know why. Like, she just doesn't like Nate to begin with in this book. Like, she just has this hatred for Nate and every single hockey player there is. Aaron approaches Anastasia and grumpily asks her if she's leaving with him, and she leaves. I'm giving a point to Nate because at least he tried to be nice and civil about the situation. Like, even if he knows Anastasia like hates him, like, he gets a point. We are now back at Nate's house, and the hockey guys are throwing a party. Nate drags another hockey player named Russ, that is Noah Lalode from the Walter Boy Show. Yeah, he drags Russ up to his room, and Nate is like, I know he probably had something to do with what happened at the rink. How Nate came to this conclusion, I have absolutely no idea. I don't remember reading anything about how he knows about this in the book, but somehow Nate came to this conclusion on his own, and he's just like, Russ probably had something to do with it. He was right, and Russ pretty much says to him that, like, it wasn't a prank that I did, but he tells Nate that, like, he was screwing around from this with this girl from UCLA, and he's like, I saw her at a lot of parties, and he pretty much thought that this girl was single, but it turns out she had a boyfriend, and the boyfriend found out about Russ and her like screwing around, so he pretty much threatens Russ, and he says that like he would make him regret even looking at her. So Russ assumes that the whole thing that happened at the rink is this boyfriend's like revenge against Russ. Nate's just like, okay, don't tell anyone about this, otherwise you're going to get kicked off the team. And so Nate then goes downstairs to the party and he spots Anastasia and Lola there. Nate goes up and introduces himself to Lola, and then that's where he learns Anastasia's name finally. Miss Lola and Mr. Robbie start to hit it off. Nate and Anastasia, they start having a conversation, and Anastasia's like, I have to use the bathroom, and Nate's just like, I'll just take you upstairs to like mine because like it's private and password protected. Anastasia and Nate go up to his room, and they pretty much just start to get to know each other for a bit. Nate is from Colorado and is studying sports medicine. Anastasia's from Seattle and she's studying business. They just start to talk about the situation with the rink, and Anastasia's like, I haven't watched you play hockey, and she's like, I strongly dislike hockey and hockey players. And they just have that type of conversation. Like, Anastasia's still not the warmest to Nate. And so they decide to head back downstairs to the party, and they end up holding hands while they're walking down the stairs. And Nate gets to the bottom step and sees Mr. Aaron staring at him angrily, and he's just like, oh shit, I think that's Anastasia's boyfriend. So Anastasia introduces Nate to Aaron. She's like, Aaron is just my skating partner, and she's like, he's not my boyfriend. And so Aaron asks Anastasia what she was doing upstairs with Nate, and he says to Anastasia, he's like, are you trying to collect team captains like Pokemon? Nate stands up for Anastasia and tells Aaron to like leave the party if he's going to act like a dick, and Aaron apologizes and he's just like, oh, I'm just upset because our rink got trashed. And Aaron's like, I heard that a hockey player on the team knocked up someone's little sister and then ghosted her. And Nate's just like, okay, that rumor isn't remotely true at all. First off, penalty box for Mr. Aaron. This isn't the first time he's going to be in the penalty box, and it's certainly not going to be the last time. Aaron says all this stuff, and then Anastasia's like, okay, I want to leave this party. Like, this party kind of sucks. And Aaron says he'll come with her, and he goes to find Lola. So Nate tells Anastasia that he's like, okay, I know what happened to the rink, and I'm sorry I lied to you and told you, like, I didn't know what happened. I have to protect my teammates, you know, which is like, okay, valid. Anastasia, she's like, she's already having a horrible time at this party, and like, you know, she's like, him lying to her didn't help that one bit, and Nate is trying his best to just like diffuse the situation, and he just ends up making it worse when he calls Anastasia dramatic, and Anastasia just walks away and she like heads home. I have no idea again where we are in the timeline. I think it's the next day. But Anastasia is at work, and I guess she works at like this roller rink or something. That's also not important to the plot whatsoever. But anyways, at work, she sees Ryan. Anastasia pretty much like tells Ryan what happened at the hockey team party. Ryan tells Anastasia, he's like, okay, first of all, Aaron's a dick, and he's always gonna be a dick. And he's also like, okay, Nate also shouldn't have lied to you. But he's also like, I understand where Nate comes from. Because remember, this guy's captain of the basketball team. So he's just like, well, since he's captain, like, he has to put his team first. And Anastasia's like, I don't agree with that logic, you know. And Ryan's just like, well, at least give Nate a chance. He's trying to be nice about this, like, you know, he's a good guy. And Anastasia, Miss Girlie, one thing about her, she knows how to hold a grudge. So she's just like, no, I'm still gonna hold this whole thing against him. Or Nathan's point of view, and he pretty much reveals to us that the rink was trashed by some of the guys at UCLA, and that Aaron was right about the girl getting pregnant, but it had nothing to do with Russ. Like, Russ is not the baby daddy. And then it's just more exposition of Nate's home life. So the lowdown is that, like, his dad is rich and is a massive jackass, and he hates hockey. He has a 16-year-old sister who is a skiing prodigy, and his mom is dead, so he has mommy and daddy issues. We're now at Nate's apartment, and Robbie asks him if he has planned Robbie's surprise birthday party yet. And Nate's just like, it's a surprise party for a reason. And Robbie just tells Nate that he wants Lola to be there. Nate's just like, great, now I have to find a way to get Lola there. You go to the hockey arena, and Nate sees Anastasia, and he goes up to talk to her, and he's just like, hey, like, we're hosting a surprise party for Robbie, like, could you possibly get Lola there, and you're invited as well? Anastasia accepts that invite, you know, kind of coldly. She's like, sure. And then she walks away, and she walks up to Henry because apparently he's the only hockey player that's on her good graces. The other hockey players see that how cold Anastasia's being to Nate, and they just start joking around, or like, Nate, like, you've lost your game. Nate sees Aaron at the rink, and Aaron tells Nate that Anastasia isn't going to, like, fuck him, and that he is wasting his time. And Nate's just like to Aaron, he's like, you're a dick, and, like, he defends Anastasia. Aaron tells him that Anastasia is just going to turn him into a simpering fool and drop him like she does with everyone else, and he can't wait to watch. I'm putting Aaron in the penalty box again. I don't know if this is, like, a couple days later or whatever, but pretty much Anastasia reveals to us that Director Skinner wants the hockey players and the ice skaters to form a better relationship with each other. So he does this whole day where they do pretty much team building activities, which includes a series of icebreakers that will help them improve their relationships. So the first activity they do is speed dating. So pretty much the skaters are sitting at tables while the hockey players are the ones that are moving from table to table. They pretty much have a conversation for 5 minutes before moving on to the next person. So Anastasia talks to JJ first, and then it goes Robbie, Joe, Chris, those two aren't important, then Russ, Henry, and then Nate. So Nate introduces himself again to Anastasia, and he's just like, hi, I'm Nate, like, let's start over. Let's start this relationship over. He pretty much apologizes for what happened. He's like, I'm sorry I lied to you. I'm sorry all these things happened to you. And Anastasia is like, okay, fine. Like, I accept your apology, and I understand, like, what you were doing, and you are on probation. I'm giving them both points for being civil to each other for once, because it's so hard in these books. There we go. It is the day of Robbie's surprise party, and they decided to do this black tie Vegas themed party. One thing about this book is they are throwing a party every 5th chapter, so get used to it. There are a lot of them. Nate finds Lola and Anastasia hanging out with Henry, Robbie, and JJ, and Henry and Anastasia are talking while Lola and Robbie are flirting with each other. And so Nate walks over and he puts his jacket around Anastasia because he's like, he can tell she's cold. And pretty much JJ and Henry leave so they can talk to each other in private. And the two of them just like make small talk with each other, and they're like, let's go play poker. Anastasia wins the game and gets up from the table to use the bathroom. And like the first party, Nate tells her to use his, and he takes her up to his bedroom. So they get to his bedroom, and the two of them pretty much start flirting again. And then we have our very first rated R smut scene, which I will not recount for you. The only thing you really need to know is that Nate doesn't joke about consent. One thing about Nate is he will be a gentleman because he asks you about consent, and he gives you a choice. He went to the school of Rhysand from Akatar, okay? He doesn't joke about consent, and he gives females a choice. Remember that. It is a couple days later after the party and the very sexy smut scene, and Anastasia is lying in bed with Ryan. And she confirms that they have ended their friends with benefits situation, but they're still just like close friends. Lola comes into the room and she's holding 2 boxes for her that are for her and Anastasia, and she's like, "Oh, these are presents from Nate." So Lola says that they have to open them over a video call. So she calls Robbie, and Robbie answers, and around him are Nate and Henry, I think, or JJ, I don't know. Around him are the roommates. And so Lola and Anastasia open their gifts over this video call, and it turns out to be customized hockey jerseys. Before the call ends, Henry says on the call, he's like, "Hey, is that Anastasia? I thought Anastasia was avoiding Nate." And so Lola asks Anastasia, like, she's like, "Okay, like, what happened at the party? Like, why are you avoiding Nate?" And Anastasia confesses that these two had sex, but then after it happened, she ran off, and that's why she's been avoiding him. And Lola and Ryan pretty much just like get all the details about what happened. They're just like, "Well, you're gonna have to stop avoiding him, and like, if you like it, like, you should just continue having sex with him." We're Nate's point of view, and Nate keeps thinking about how Anastasia ran off on him after that they had sex, and he's like, "I want to go and try and see if I can talk to her." Meanwhile, in the Puck Bunnies group chat, boys learn that Anastasia, this girl named Summer, who's not that important, and Kitty, the girl Nate had sex with at the beginning of the book, all live in the same building. The boys pretty much joke that none of these girls want to have sex with Nate, and they pretty much start talking about Anastasia and her relationship with Ryan because they don't really know about their friends with benefits situation. They think that they were dating, and Nate gets annoyed by this. Nate then goes to the rink to watch Anastasia skate, and he watches Anastasia slam into the boards. And Coach Brady is like, "Okay, like, you are not doing the quadruple lets, like, we're keeping it a triple." And Miss Anastasia, she is like, "It's all or nothing for me." So she gets upset that she's like not able to do the quadruple lets. Meanwhile, like, she's literally like, she slammed into the hockey boards, like, with no like protective gear whatsoever. She's just being kind of crazy. And so blood starts dripping from her temple because duh, like, she slammed into the boards really hard. And Nate tells Anastasia, she's like, "You need to go to the hospital." And he picks Anastasia up and he sets her on the medical bed in the arena, and he starts to treat her injury because remember, he's in sports medicine, so it's okay. Aaron then walks into the room, and then Nate's just like, "Okay, like, can you take Anastasia to the hospital?" And then he also gives instructions for what he and Lola need to do. Like, can you tell Lola that she needs to do this for Anastasia? And then Aaron's just like, "I can do all of this because we live together." And Nate is like, "What do you mean you live together? Like, what the fuck?" And yeah, +1, honestly, for Nate treating her injury and just being an overall good guy. So, woohoo. I'm pretty sure it's like either a couple days or something, but Anastasia reveals to us that her and Aaron learn that they have qualified for sectionals, and they drive home, and Anastasia asks Aaron if he wants to go out tonight, and Aaron's like, "Sorry, I already have plans." So Lola is at the boys' hockey game, and she's like to Anastasia, she's like, "Let's go out and celebrate, like, they won their game, let's go." And so the girls are at the apartment getting ready. Lola tells Anastasia that they're going to this place called the Honeypot, which is like a popular nightclub in LA. And these girls go to the club, and they are in a VIP booth with the hockey players. They're in the community of Maple Hills. So I don't know, like, it's a fictional town, so I don't know how far that is from like LA itself. So I'm guessing it's not that far if like I guess Maple Hills is in LA, considering like their competitors are UCLA, and I guess they can easily go to LA for these clubs. So this book is like overall confusing logistically. Nate and Anastasia see each other at the club, and they start to talk and dance with each other, and there's this very steamy dancing scene. They're dancing for a very long time, and they dance until Lola pretty much tells them it's time to go home. So Nate gets an Uber. However, it's not big enough for all of them to fit in it, so Anastasia has to sit on his lap in this Uber because, I don't know, there's like 9 of them or something that are trying to cram into this Uber. And Anastasia leans back and she tells Nate that she's not wearing any underwear. I am not going to recount this scene in detail, but if you couldn't figure it out already, or if you know anything about this book, you've probably heard about this scene. But yeah, Nate and Anastasia have sex in the Uber while Cruel Summer by Taylor Swift is playing on the radio at full volume while all of their friends are in this Uber as well. Penalty box. Absolutely. Penalty box for both Anastasia and Nate, because absolutely not. Like, okay, car sex is one thing, but in an Uber with all of your friends and a driver, like, that is just another thing. Like, shut up right now. Like, shut up right now. No. Yeah, so like they're having this very steamy, smutty scene. And like as they're doing it, as you know, something is being shoved up her vajayjay, the music cuts out and the friends are like, let's go for a McDonald's run. And yeah, so after their McDonald's run, they go to Nate's place and Nate brings Anastasia up to his room and Anastasia tries to punch in a code on his keypad and realizes, and it's just like not working. She realizes that the code she was punching in on his keypad was for Ryan's room. So then Nate becomes jealous of Ryan, and Anastasia's like, why are you jealous? Like, we're not hooking up anymore. Plus, this girl is like drunk off her rocker. They finally enter the room, and Anastasia, she really wants to have sex with Nate. And Nate like stops her, and he's like, I only want to hook up when you're sober and like I know you have a fully conscious choice of what you're doing and what you're making and all of that. And like he wants to know that like she truly wants to have sex with him like when he's sober and like he's not just going to be a drunken hookup. Because remember, this guy went to the Resand School of Choices. Anastasia, she starts to cry because Nate doesn't want to have sex with her. And Nate tells her, he's like, well, I really do want to have sex with you, but like not when you're drunk. Anastasia lies in bed with Nate until like he falls asleep, and then she requests an Uber and tries to get out of there. It is the next morning and Mr. Nathan wakes up and he regrets how he handled the situation with Anastasia, and he's trying to get a hold of her, but he has no success. So Nate goes downstairs and sees JJ, Robbie, and Lola, and they pretty much just start laughing at him because they know that Miss Anastasia didn't sleep with him and that his bed was cold. And Lola's like to him, she's like, she's sleeping in Henry's room. It's like, I caught Anastasia trying to sneak out, and like, I wasn't gonna let her get into an Uber with only a t-shirt. Nathan goes to Henry's room and he finds Anastasia sleeping in his bed while Henry is on like a half inflated air mattress on the floor. Henry leaves the room so these two can talk, and Nate apologizes to Anastasia and he's just like, I'm sorry about the way I like handled it. And Anastasia's like, no, like you don't need to apologize, like you're always allowed to withdraw consent like anytime. Anastasia tells him that like she struggles with the idea of rejection, getting rejected, people not wanting her. So when Nate denied having sex with her the night before, like she just felt really rejected and overwhelmed, and she's like, I'm also like not ready to be in a serious relationship yet. Like I've only been doing hookups, you know? And so the two make amends with each other. Anastasia tells Nate that he's back on her shit list until he finds a way for them to get like their rank back. I'm giving a point to both of them for actually having like a healthy conversation for once, because I feel like we just don't get enough of those in books. So yeah. I think we're later on in the week or something, but Nate says to us, he's like, yeah, it's not hard to be #1 on Anastasia's shit list since Coach Faulkner keeps making us go overtime for practice, and cuts into Anastasia's skating time. So the boys are still on the ice practicing, and Anastasia is getting impatient. So she decides to skate onto the ice and do her routine. So Nate sees her and he's just like, she's gonna get hurt again. Like, if she comes onto the ice while we're all still like practicing for hockey, like some hockey player's gonna like crush her, because again, remember, she's super tiny. So Nate sees her and he starts to skate toward her, and he's like, I have to carry her off this ice. And so like Nate's just like, are you trying to get injured again? Are you an idiot? Like, are you trying to get hurt again? And Anastasia is angry because she's like, well, like, you are fucking up my skating schedule, get off the ice. And so later that night, Nate is trying to figure out where Anastasia is so he can talk to her. And so Nate texts Anastasia and she tells him that if he can find her before midnight, he can finally fuck that pretty little mouth of hers. Mr. Nate is running all over town trying to figure out where Miss Anastasia is. It is now 15 minutes till midnight, and Nate still hasn't found Anastasia. So he video calls Anastasia, and she accepts it, and that's when Nate realizes that she is in his bedroom. Honestly, point to Anastasia, because I too would be petty like that and make a guy drive around to find me. Nate's just like, if you were in my bedroom, why are you making me run all over town? And then Anastasia's like to him, she's just like, oh, didn't anyone tell you that there's a party at your house? Anastasia reveals that she worked with JJ to annoy Nate. Anastasia then goes downstairs and she's with everyone and they're waiting for Nate to appear at the house. And Nate arrives 30 seconds after midnight. So Anastasia is ready to walk up to him and like, rub it in his face, when all of a sudden the girl Summer, who I've mentioned before and told you is not important, and she still's not important, the girl Summer walks up to Nathan, whisper something in his ear. Nate then takes Summer up to his bedroom, and Anastasia and JJ are like super confused. They're just like, what is happening? Anastasia decides to walk upstairs and goes into Nate's room, and she's just like, why are you making me look like a fool and hooking up with another girl? And Nate's just like, well, you made me look like a fool by making me run around all over town for you. And Anastasia is just like, why would you fuck another girl, like, just to annoy me? And Nate's just like, I never touched Summer. Like, she got her period and needed to use my bathroom. Like, I only stayed in this room because I knew that you would get jealous and come up here and try to talk to me. Anastasia then tells Nate that she's angry with him. And then we get another rated R smut scene, which lasts for 2 chapters, and I am not going to recount it for you. After they're done, Nate goes to Henry's room to grab like girl stuff because he knows that Henry keeps those things in his bathroom. And so while doing so, he accidentally cockblocks Henry when he opens the door and sees that he's making out with a girl on his bed. And then he goes back into this room and Nate and Anastasia shower together. It's the next morning and Nate drops Anastasia off at her apartment and he's just like, when are you available to meet up again? And Anastasia and her type A ass, like, she has her planner and she's just like, I'm busy every day. And the only day that they can meet up is on Thursday when Nate convinces her that they can go shopping for Halloween costumes together. Mr. Nate also is like, I'm going to figure out a way to squeeze my way into hang out with Anastasia. So Nate's just like, oh, I'm going to pick you up from work later tonight. He's like, why do you need a planner? Like, after he picks her up from work, and Anastasia just tells him that like she's always had a planner since she was 9, and it turned out as like this therapy activity because she has severe anxiety. So like they start talking about her home life and all that deep stuff. I'm not going to repeat it here because I don't think any of that's important. But yeah, they pretty much start making out in his car, and then Anastasia goes to her apartment. So Anastasia walks into her apartment and she sees Aaron and Lola, and Aaron can see that Nate has left like hickeys on her neck, and he's like to Anastasia, he's like, you look cheap as hell with those on, and I'm not going to skate with you and like at sectionals if you have those on you. And Then Lola lets it slip that Anastasia has been hooking up with Nate, and that pisses Aaron off even more. And he pretty much starts to lecture Anastasia about, hooking up with him, and Lola defends Anastasia because obviously they're besties. And then Aaron stomps and goes into his bedroom. Aaron penalty box again. I feel like I don't even need to announce it anymore. Like every time Aaron appears on the screen, like he's immediately going to the penalty box. Anastasia goes to practice with Aaron and he's still being a bitch to her. And so Nate is then watching them skate, and like everyone can tell that like Anastasia and Aaron are fighting. Like they are out of sync with each other. They're not doing well. So Aaron then storms off after practice, and Nate's just like, I will kick his ass for like you if you want me to. And Anastasia's like, no, like you can't do that. I still need him for sectionals. And so Nate then tells Anastasia, he's just like, well, instead of going to the mall to shop for our Halloween costumes, like let's just go back to my place and order our costumes online. And Anastasia agrees. They go back to Nate's place and they have pretty much this whole conversation about playing house, which like I don't want to repeat. I'm not gonna put a penalty box in. I will give them a yellow card. Like that is a warning. It made me feel super uncomfortable reading it. Like, do not bring up house when you're around me. They go back to Nate's apartment, and Nate is trying to order takeout for them to eat, but Anastasia is being a little picky girl, and she's like, everything has too many calories. And so Nate is like, well, I'm going to order wings. And then Nate also suspects there's something going on, and he knows that Aaron is controlling like Anastasia's like diet, like meal plan, right? And so he tells Anastasia, he's just like, well, we don't have to talk about it at like this very moment, because remember, he went to the school of Resand. Everyone has a choice when it comes to these topics and conversations. Where he's like, it's okay if you have like wings for this one meal. Like like calories don't exist in like our pretend reality anyways, because remember, they're still playing house. And then after they're done eating their wings, they do the dirty. It is now Halloween night, and they again decide to go to the honeypot club for Halloween. Anastasia arrives, and she sees that the entire hockey team are dressed up in minion onesies. And Nate is dressed up as Gru from Despicable Me. Penalty box, Nate, no, just no. Anyway, so Nate dressed up as Gru, and he is staring at her intently. And, like, she can see that he looks mad, because it turns out Miss Anastasia decided to dress up as JJ for Halloween and is wearing JJ's hockey jersey. So Nate grabs Anastasia and drags her through the crowd to the bathroom. And in the bathroom, we get another rated R smut scene between these two, with Nate dressed up as Gru from Despicable Me. After they're done, they go and join their friends in their VIP booth, and they see Lola walk in with Aaron following behind her, and Aaron is clutching his arm, and Anastasia is just like, what the hell happened to you? And Aaron says, ask your boyfriend, Anastasia. Absolute chaos happens, and Nate tells Anastasia that he's like, I had nothing to do with Aaron getting hurt, but Miss Anastasia just doesn't believe him. Nate is just like, he interrogates all of the hockey players on the team. He's like, which one of you did this to Aaron? Like, which one of you hurt Mr. Aaron? And everyone's like, we didn't have anything to do with what happened to Aaron. The hockey team pretty much learn that Aaron told the dean on them. And Coach Faulkner tells the team that they're all off the hockey team unless someone comes forward and takes responsibility for this. Nate, being Mr. Hockey Player, Savior, textbook hero, he's like, I can't let this happen. Like, so he steps forward and tells Coach Faulkner that it was all him. So obviously, Coach Faulkner doesn't believe Nate, because, like, he's too nice to do any of that. So the Coach Faulkner has no choice, but he tells the dean that it was Nate that did it. And so the dean says that Nate is off the hockey team until Aaron can skate again. Nate is trying to make things right with Anastasia and goes to her apartment to talk to her. Aaron opens the door and lets Nate in, and Nate walks into her room and sees that these two are with each other in bed. They're not doing anything, like Girlie's just crying while Ryan's trying to comfort her. And Anastasia is just like unwilling to talk to Mr. Nate. And Mr. Nate, when he's under high amounts of stress, this dude gets migraines and like really bad headaches, really bad migraines. So when he's trying to talk with Anastasia, his migraine comes back, and Ryan can tell, he's like, oh, something is not right with Nate right now. Like, he looks like he's about to be sick. And Nate tells him, he's like, yeah, I just have a migraine, I'm gonna leave, and then he blacks out. Anastasia then has her whole chapter about therapy, which I'm like skipping because it's not really important to the plot. Like, it's more important to her characterization, but even then, Hannah Grace doesn't really know what to do with her characterization. We'll get to that at the end. But yeah, anyways, so we learn that after Nate blacked out, his teammates Bobby and Joe like go to Anastasia's apartment to come pick him up, and they try to convince Anastasia that like Nate didn't hurt Aaron. We then learn that it's been 2 weeks since all that happened, and Nate still can't play because Aaron still can't skate, and he's still moping about Anastasia. So the hockey team goes out of town for an away game, and Nate can go out of town with them, like he just can't play. So when they're out of town, Nate and the rest of the team learn that Nate is still benched because Aaron can't skate again. And Nate's just like, how is it possible that he can't skate? Like, they just went to a competition today. And they learn that Aaron's wrist gave out when they were doing their routine, and he dropped Anastasia. So then they get back home somehow, and Nate then visits Anastasia at her apartment, and they make up. And Nate tells Anastasia that he missed her, and Anastasia tells him about what happened at the skating competition and how scary it felt being dropped, and then they shower together. It is now a couple days later, and Anastasia is still upset about being dropped and what happened at the competition, and she decides to go to the bar, and she's just like worried about nationals because it's 8 weeks away, and Aaron just like hasn't shown up. He hasn't picked up her calls. She doesn't know where he is. He hasn't been to practice or anything like that. Like, he's pretty much avoiding her. And remember, this girl, she wants to get to the Olympics, but all of these things keep happening that are pretty much telling her, like, you're not going to the Olympics, girl. And so at this bar, Anastasia runs into Russ because he ends up working there, I guess. And they leave together, and Russ has Nathan pick Anastasia up. And yeah, so when Nate picks Anastasia up, they pretty much talk and about like Anastasia's worries, and Nate's just like, well, how about I become your skating partner while Aaron's out? Because like, well, I'm still benched until Mr. Aaron can skate again, so I might as well get my practice in skating, and you need practice anyways. So yeah, +1 for Nathan. We then have a chapter of Nate and Anastasia going to the mall to shop for an outfit that Nate can wear for figure skating practice. Nate asks Anastasia like if she wants to go get something to eat, and Anastasia brings up her meal plan again, and she's just like, I can't, like, I have to stick to my meal plan. And she shows it to Nate finally, and Nate is like, this meal plan only consists of vegetables and very little protein. And Anastasia's like, yeah, like Aaron's the one who designed it for me. And Nate's just like, you're massively under eating. Like, the amount of calories you burn while skating, you need to eat more protein and carbs to make sure like your muscles are recovering and like you're getting the nutrients and energy you need. And so, like, Anastasia, she just tells Nate that, like, he's being dramatic, and she's just like, well, I only, like, stick to this meal plan because Aaron struggles to lift me because I'm too heavy. And Nate's just like, no, I'm not being dramatic. Like, Aaron is unhinged, and I'm gonna tell your coach, like, about this meal plan, like, the next time I see her, because, like, this is not okay whatsoever. So Anastasia, she has her whole, like, this whole, like, eating disorder storyline as well, and that's, like, part of her character, but to me, I don't think it's handled in the greatest way, but we are not here to talk about that. I'm probably gonna add less and less details as, like, more of these pages go on, because I think at this point we've only made it to like halfway into the novel, maybe not even that far. So by the time I get to page like 300, I'm kind of sick of what's happening in this story. So I'm just trying to speed this up for both of us, for our sakes. Now we have a scene where Anastasia and Nate have their first skating practice together, and they're pretty much bickering, and Anastasia is pretty much trying to teach Nate about figure skating moves, etc. And I really could not be bothered to explain more about this chapter. Nate then drops Anastasia off at her apartment, and she finally finds Aaron. And she asks pretty much Aaron about her meal plan, and she's like, well, like, I think I'm under eating. And then Aaron gets defensive about it and starts to make more comments, like, to Anastasia about, like, her fucking Nate and pretty much her being a slut. Anastasia, like, rightfully so, gets upset about what he says because, again, Aaron, immediate penalty. Like, Anastasia gets upset and she, like, gets Nate to pick her up from her apartment again. Anastasia is now at Nate's place trying to teach Robbie how to cook, I guess. I don't know how we got to that point. But pretty much Nate reveals that it's been 2 weeks since Anastasia and Aaron had that fight, and now Anastasia has been practically living with Nate at his house. And then Nate gets a visit from his rich-ass dad that has nothing to do with the plot whatsoever. We have another scene where Nate and Anastasia are at skating practice and they are trying to practice lifts. But Anastasia still has PTSD from being dropped at their skating competition, and she just, like, won't let Nate lift her. So once the practice is over, Aaron shows up at the ring and he asks to talk to Anastasia. Aaron pretty much still just proves in this whole scene that he is a dick that only cares about himself. And then later that night, we have another hockey team party. The hockey team throws another party, and the hockey team pretty much takes videos of Nate being a really, like, needy, naked drunk. I don't know where we are in the timeline, but we get a scene where Nate takes Anastasia to the school swimming pool where they can work on, you know, helping Anastasia overcome her fear of being lifted. And so he gets Lola to pack Anastasia's swimsuit. It turns out Lola packed Anastasia's sexy bikini, so obviously there's some sexual tension happening in this scene. And after some convincing and a lot of work, Anastasia finally lets Nate lift her. +1 for Anastasia for overcoming her fear, and +1 for Nate helping Anastasia overcome her fear. It is now Christmas break, and the hockey boys have transformed their home into this Christmas grotto kind of thing, and so Nate invites Anastasia to come to Colorado with him for Christmas and offers to fly with her to Seattle to meet her parents, because I guess that's how serious the relationship is now. And then they have sex, and Nate tells her that she just gave him his Christmas present. Nate then goes Christmas shopping for Anastasia and decides to get her pajamas, even though JJ and Henry are really trying to convince him to buy her lingerie. And then the hockey boys have a Christmas party and they play Drunk Twister, and Henry gets cock-blocked for a second time. That's all you need to know about those chapters. Later at this party, the crew decide to go outside and sit around the campfire, and Anastasia is about to fall asleep on Nate's lap when all of a sudden he and the other guys, like, jump up and they run back to the house, and he's just like to Anastasia, like, you need to stay put, like, don't come into the house. Lola then calls Anastasia and she tells her that there's a fight happening in the house and she's hiding out in Robbie's room, and, like, she's like, I'll let you know when it's safe to come back in. And, like, obviously Miss Anastasia, she doesn't listen, and so she runs into the house. and she pretty much finds the hockey guys breaking up a fight, and she sees Nathan pinning Aaron up against the wall. And like JJ eventually like just yells at everyone to leave the party, and when the last person leaves, everyone in the room starts to yell at each other, and Nate is mad at Anastasia because she didn't listen to him and she could have gotten hurt like by coming back into the house. And like Anastasia is mad because she thinks Nate was the one beating up Aaron. And so Henry then tells Anastasia that like he was the one that actually started the fight and that Nate was the one that was trying to break it up. And Henry tells Anastasia that Aaron was talking shit about her and that he deserved to get beaten up. It's later that night, and then Nate and Anastasia go to bed, and then the next morning they talk about what happened to the party. That chapter's cute, so I guess plus points to both of them for having another conversation. Anastasia and Nate decide to talk to Henry about what happened with Aaron. And so Henry and Nate fill in Anastasia about all of the shit that Aaron has said about her. And the short version of this Aaron drama, because this drama is way too long for this book, and I swear this drama adds like 50 pages that are 50 pages too many. All of Aaron's friends go to UCLA, and he kept telling his friends that Anastasia was a slut and pretty much would trap Nate with a baby, and she pretty much didn't have the talent to go all the way in skating. Aaron arrived at the party last night to bring Anastasia home back to their apartment, and he was telling everyone that Anastasia was just using the hockey boys as a place to live like she did with him. And he says that no one will ever be able to love Anastasia because how could they when her own parents couldn't? Because more context, Anastasia's adopted. So he says like how could anyone love her if her own parents couldn't? And the ones that bought her were the only wanted her to fill up their trophy cabinet. And then that's when Henry punched Aaron. Anastasia then thanks Henry for standing up to him, and then she has a good cry with Nate. Anastasia and Nate fly to Seattle to visit Anastasia's parents over the holidays. During this time, Anastasia has a heart-to-heart talk with her mom, and she tells her mom what Aaron said about her, and her mom pretty much reassures Anastasia that like they love her and that they'll always love her. Cute stuff like they don't care if she wins all of these awards or what anything, like they love her even though, like, you know, she's adopted and all that, like, either way, they have unconditional love for her. So good for Anastasia. Point to Anastasia for resolving some of her trauma. And then Nate and Anastasia fly to Denver to spend Christmas at Nate's dad's mansion because, remember, his dad is rich as fuck. They have the mansion to themselves for the holidays, so obviously they have mansion sex multiple times. So they spend a couple days at the mansion. We learn that Nate's family is rich because his family pretty much owns a ski resort that has been passed down for generations over the years, and Nate doesn't want to be the next owner like his dad, and he pretty much just talks about his daddy issues, and somehow we get to the conversation about them having kids, and like this is important, okay? Anastasia says she wants to adopt and like having a baby would destroy my vagina. Again, this is important for later. The next day, Nate decides to go run an errand, and Anastasia and her critical thinking skills that have obviously been so apparent in this book decides that this morning it would be a good idea for her to go to the frozen lake behind Nate's house and skate on it. Nate calls Anastasia and like he asks her, he's like, hey, where are you? I just got back from running the errand. And Anastasia tells Nate that she's skating on the ice when the ice cracks and she falls into the lake. When I read this for the first time, when I read this for the second time, I got mad both ways. Like, penalty box actually for Anastasia for just being a dumb bitch. Girlie is like, in this book, is like a master at therapy, a master of like emotionally like charged kind of things, but at the same time, she has no critical thinking skills whatsoever. So I'm genuinely finding it hard to actually like Anastasia throughout this book. Like, I'm telling you like the good things about her. Nate ends up finding Anastasia and she pulls her out of the lake, and she, of course, this being a book, she ends up being okay. And they pretty much both cry, and this is when they tell each other that they both love each other. And then now it is Christmas morning, and Anastasia and Nate are in the hospital. Anastasia then gets discharged from the hospital on New Year's Eve, and they go back to Nate's place. And this is where they then finally can exchange Christmas presents with each other, and Nate gets Anastasia a jersey, I think, and then he tells Anastasia to lie down on the kitchen island. If you couldn't guess it, these two have sex on the kitchen island. And they keep going until suddenly they hear the front door of the house open, and Nate's little sister, Sasha, calls for him. And Nate pretty much pulls on his underwear just in time as his sister walks into the kitchen. And this girl is 16, by the way, and she can tell like they were definitely doing something. So penalty box for both of them. Again, kitchen island sex and almost doing it in front of a minor. I will give them a penalty for that. Yeah, Nate and Anastasia then go upstairs to hide from like his dad and all of that, and when they come back down, Sasha tells them that the dad left for the resort and he wants to meet them for lunch. So they have lunch with Nate's dad. I don't care enough to tell you about this chapter, so if you're curious, go read it yourself. Nate's dad really doesn't do anything in this book, so why would I bring him up now? It's like a couple days later or something. I don't know. The timeline is not clear. They head back to LA, and they pretty much catch up with the rest of the crew, and they catch up about what happened over the holidays, and pretty much then Anastasia tells Nate that Aaron has been cleared to skate, and so Nate can finally go back to playing hockey. And Anastasia also tells Nate that she has plans to move back into her old apartment, because remember, like, old apartment is where Aaron lives, and Nate is not happy about that because, like, obviously he shouldn't be happy about that. Anastasia then goes to the rink and has a meeting with Aaron and Coach Brady, and Aaron pretty much apologizes for what he said to her. Anastasia obviously is like not ready to accept his apology. She's just like, I need to take some time to think about it. And so then after that, Anastasia and Lola go out for the night so like they can just forget about like their worries and all that, and they get super drunk, and somehow she ends up with Nate and at Nate's apartment, and Nate has to pretty much recount about what happened that night because Anastasia can't remember. Later on in this book, Nate tells us that Aaron and Anastasia are doing couples counseling because they think it will make them better skaters, and Mr. Nate is obviously like skeptical about this because he's just like, Aaron is a dick and he will always be a dick. So Anastasia doesn't want to talk to Nate about like this counseling thing and all of that, so that just makes Nate even more mad. They have another fight, and I genuinely couldn't care less about this fight, like, because anyone with critical thinking skills, like, would side with Nathan on this issue. Anastasia is then thinking about her living situation, and she tells Lola that they should move out and have a fresh start, and then Aaron and Anastasia are then at skating practice, and they start arguing again. Surprise, surprise, again, and Aaron is being a dick again, and yeah, their skating practice doesn't go well. Nate then decides to talk to JJ, Robbie, and Henry about his relationship with Anastasia, and during the scene they just try to give him advice for how he can fix his relationship, and so Nate and Anastasia go on a date, and Nate apologizes for his behavior, and Anastasia accepts it. She tells him about what happened at practice with Aaron, and then Nate drives her back to her apartment. Nate and Anastasia have pre-skating competition sex. It is now the day of Anastasia's skating competition, and Nate can't go to it because their team has a hockey game against UCLA, and the skating competition is in San Diego. Nate plans to drive to San Diego like right when the game ends. So the hockey boys get to the arena, win their hockey game, And Nate talks to the captain at UCLA, and his name is Corey. He's not important whatsoever. But pretty much Nate tells him that, like, all of the drama that happened and how he was, like, kicked off the team for a while. And Corey reveals that he knows how Aaron got hurt. Aaron got hurt because apparently he was playing football with some guys from, like, the UCLA hockey team or something, or football team or something, and he got tackled and landed on his arm wrong, and so that's how he hurt himself. But nobody at UCLA or anyone knew that he decided to blame Nathan for this. And so Nathan, being Mr. Fixer, he's like, oh, like he starts putting all the pieces together, and he immediately starts to drive to San Diego, and he arrives and makes it just in time to watch Anastasia and Aaron perform, only to see them do their routine, and at the end of it, Nate watches Aaron kiss Anastasia in the middle of the rink. Anastasia starts to have a panic attack because of the kiss, and she is trying to get as far away as possible from Aaron. And Aaron catches up to her, and Anastasia's like, you went too far. Like, we are done being skating partners. And Coach Brady arrives, and she tells Anastasia, she's like, okay, like, we need to see your results first, and then we can talk about what the hell just happened on the ice. So Nate then arrives and comforts Anastasia, and Aaron is still acting like he has done nothing wrong to Anastasia whatsoever, and like his kiss was valid and all of that. And then Nate punches Aaron in the face. +1 for Nate. Duh. Coach Brady then tells Nate to leave, and Anastasia and Aaron sit and wait for the results on the bench, and they end up placing first among the skaters, but Anastasia is too upset and she leaves. So Anastasia then tells Coach Brady that she is done skating with Aaron, and she decides to go solo. And then Aaron gets mad at her for doing this to him, and he calls Anastasia a bitch and tells her that she's ruining his life. 1 point to Anastasia because Girlie was able to make that decision to go solo. Finally. I dropped the scorecard. Nate drives her home, and when they get back to her apartment, the hockey players and Lola have already packed up all of her stuff, and Lola tells Anastasia that they'll be living with the boys until they find a place of their own. It is now 3 months later, so March or April, I'm guessing, and so Nate ends up having a meeting with Director Skinner, and Director Skinner tells Nate that Anastasia told him the truth about what happened with Aaron and all of that. He apologizes for how he treated Nate or whatever. Nate then goes to see Coach Faulkner, and they discuss who's going to replace Nate as team captain for the hockey team. Nate decides that Henry is the best option for this. And so Nate then goes back to his place, and Anastasia is cooking for the hockey guys, and they have a cute moment, and the end of the chapter ends with Nate saying, "You're my favorite," I whisper, leaning to kiss her flushed cheeks. "Even if I had crab hands?" "Even if you had crab hands, Anastasia." That's how the chapter ends before the epilogue happens, so I guess point to Anastasia and +1 point for Nathan. And now we make it to the epilogue. First off, penalty box for Hannah Grace for this epilogue. This is probably one of the worst epilogues in a book I've ever read. And that's saying a lot. Usually I'm very indifferent, but this epilogue is the reason why, like, I brought it down like a star, like when I read it the first time, because like it was just the most infuriating thing to read ever. I've skipped a lot of things that happened in this book. Like, this is a 500-page novel, and I only picked out really the important things you need to know about. Like, there are obviously things I've skipped, and also like character things I've skipped and all that, but like I picked out most of the important plot in this book, which was really hard considering there was none. But even then, I think you can get an idea of who the characters are and sort of their morals and their standards and all of that. The epilogue takes place 2-ish years later after the book ends. And so pretty much in those 2-ish years, we learn that Anastasia goes to the Olympics, wins a gold medal for ladies singles, and then she becomes pregnant. Hannah Grace decides to add a pregnancy trope at the end of the epilogue. And remember when, like, a couple, like, chapters back, like, I don't know, maybe like 200 pages back, there's a whole chapter about Anastasia telling Nate that she's like, I do not want to get pregnant. It interferes with my dreams of going to the Olympics and all of that. And, like, it's just like, I want to adopt because she's also adopted. And, like, I don't know what Hannah Grace was thinking when she was writing this epilogue, because, like, what makes you think, like, it would be realistic for Anastasia to get pregnant? Especially, like, she goes to the Olympics, she gets her goal, and then, like, to think that she wouldn't want to achieve that goal again and continue achieving that goal again is so weird to me, because, like, this girlie, she's been type A. All she's been talking about this whole book is going to the Olympics. And, like, what do you mean she only goes to the Olympics once and then she becomes pregnant? Like, no, like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, there's not one time in this book where she's, like, seems okay with getting pregnant. Like, okay. Anyways, that's Anastasia's plot. Now Nate is a professional hockey player and is playing for the team in Seattle. That's pretty much it. Like, Nate just becomes a professional hockey player. And also in these books, they make hockey players seem like the most famous people in the world when, like, that's really not the case. Like, I know that, like, there are, like, definitely, like, some, like, professional, like, hockey players that are super popular and people, like, look at them as celebrities. In the epilogue, like, they act like he's, like, a celebrity almost. Like, people will see him at the airport and they, like, crowd around him or something. I don't know. Anyways, in the epilogue, they decide to go to Cabo for a baby moon or something, and Nate proposes to Anastasia, and she says yes, obviously. So that's how it ends. There's also the epilogue for Wildfire, so you can, like, which is a second book to this series, so, like, you get more hints as to, like, what they're up to and all that, but, like, pretty much the emphasis in this epilogue is that, like, these two have a baby together. And it's very infuriating to read about. This was me explaining the plot of Icebreaker. If you can tell by the end of it, like, the last 400 to 500 pages of this book, I genuinely could not care less about. So I just picked the most, like, interesting plot points in this book and decided to share it with you. Yeah, but that is Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. I will be doing Wildfire bit later. I'm not gonna do it, like, anytime soon. I think I'll try to do that video, like, when it's closer to the third book being released in this series. Don't let this cover fool you. This book is very smutty. It's pretty much just figure skater, hockey player sex for most of it in very interesting places. I really thought I would like this book the second time reading it, and I don't think I want to pick this book up ever again. That is the kind of the plot of Icebreaker, the viral TikTok hockey romance. If you enjoyed this video, please watch some of my other ones. My social links are going to be in the description box below, and I will see you in my next video, hopefully. Yeah, thank you for watching, and bye!